a nerdy alchemist with basically no talent other than alchemy, comes to the royal capital, where he meets the beautiful yet competent S-rank adventurer Laffy. Laffy is no joke, like the other female characters in different manga. In fact, she's a real force to be reckoned with and helps Reiss a lot. Reiss has a talent for supreme alchemy, which allows him to create elixirs out of thin air whenever he needs them. In a series of events, Laffy's sister contracts a deadly disease. In search of a cure, Laffy and Reiss head into the dangerous forest to gather ingredients for the medicine, where they encounter a doomsday-level monster with an infinite regeneration ability and magic casting power. Are you curious to see how they defeat an SS-rank immortal monster with an insane regeneration ability? Watch until the end and like the video to find out. In the deep forest, the demons ravage the land like savage beasts. Facing them is a hero, a red-haired girl who cuts them down. Laffy is a vigilant force of good. However, the only problem is that she's stuck with a particular guy. Reiss deploys a single-celled approach by telling her that he's got an elixir to heal all of her wounds. Laffy finds his offer quite baffling, since elixirs are supposed to be like diamonds, and this guy over here is using elixirs on tiny little scratches. Reiss is dumb as hell, but he thinks it's all fine being reckless, because he can simply make more of these precious elixirs later. Laffy finds the idiocy of her alchemist friend revolting. Elixir is a universal medicine, capable of healing any and all wounds. Only a handful of alchemists can produce it in a few years. Acquiring it is a hassle, too, since one has to sacrifice a kidney to get it. Laffy was just like that. She wanted to spend all of her belongings to acquire an elixir from a man. However, she was rejected, because the only elixir left was reserved for royalty. Laffy couldn't compromise by turning away, because her sister was facing an extreme situation. However, there was nothing she could do at the time. Suddenly, a random dude's creepily face planted and parked right on her chest. Laffy didn't know the hell this guy was on about. She caught a glimpse of his zombie-like expression. Reiss was starved for food. After Laffy tended to this pathetic loser's food problem, she learned he was an alchemist. Laffy is an adventurer who does adventurer things. Since she helped him with food, Reiss promised to help her by making something in return. Knowing that alchemists are basically cheat codes and have the capacity to make elixirs, she asked if it was within his power to do so. However, Reiss gave off the kind of energy that made him seem like a lost puppy. Laffy thought it was too good to be true for a deadbeat virgin like him to have that kind of power. Surprisingly enough, Reiss magically made an elixir appear out of nowhere, utterly shocking Laffy with how fast he made it. She inspected the item to check if it was a fake. Safe to say, it wasn't after she learned that it was the identical version of the one that she saw in the store. Laffy wanted to buy the elixir off of him in return for all of her money. However, the boy didn't ask her anything and made a simple request instead. Reiss didn't know about things like selling a potion, since it was his first time coming to the capital. Laffy thinks that he's settling for far too cheap, if that's his only demand. Reiss tells her that he wants to sell potions because he's basically broke after losing his wallet. They arrive at the Amazing Adventurer Guild. Reiss is dazzled like the child he is. Entering inside, the other adventurers are shocked to see the S-rank Adventurer Laffy. Reiss inquires if she's an important person of some kind. Laffy explains that she's a girl boss who's at the top of the food chain when it comes to adventurers. Reiss finds it an amazing achievement from her side. Laffy greets Amelia, who teasingly asks if the two are in a relationship with each other. Laffy is flustered and vents her frustration at Amelia after denying the relationship accusations. Reiss states that he wants to sell a potion. At first, you might think it's a simple potion, but this man pulled out an elixir out of his pants like it was for free. Laffy is stunned by the alchemist's abilities, since normal alchemists are only supposed to make one elixir over the entire course of their lifespans. Reiss, on the other hand, is like Moses when compared to ordinary alchemists. Laffy questions the kind of man she is dealing with. Amelia confirms the legitimacy of the elixir and questions if he's truly fine with selling such a valuable item. Reiss shocks her when this man pulls out even more elixirs like it's nobody's business. He's outright asserting dominance while shocking Amelia. Laffy takes him by the hand and immediately shoves Reiss outside a quiet location. She confronts him regarding the ridiculousness of his powers. Reiss doesn't know what she's talking about because he's just a typical guy trying to make some money. Laffy tells this fool straight up that his skill is beyond anything, making him the Gojo Satoru of his world. Laffy believes that Reiss will be in imminent danger if people learn about his powers. She advises him against selling elixirs like they're candy. Reiss decides to take her advice, but he's still naive. He doesn't really have anything else in mind to sell, beside the Elixirs. Laffy offers the man to stay at her place for the night because, right now, he's got nothing on him. Reiss ponders her offer as this starved incel has never been to a woman's house before. Reiss thinks that it's a good offer and decides to accept her terms. Arriving at Laffy's house, Reiss is shocked because this place is massive. Reiss spots Laffy's cute sister Sylvia. Laffy leaves Sylvia with Reiss while she brews them some tea. The girl casually sits in front of him, but this man is literally dying inside because of his introverted nature. He literally cannot hold a conversation with her at all because he's got so much on his mind. Sylvia initiates the conversation by thanking Reiss for giving her sister the elixir she wanted. Reiss claims that he doesn't really think much of the deal as he's getting something in return for it. Sylvia explains that Laffy worked very hard for her sake, in any way she could to find a cure for her illness. Reiss now understands Laffy's desperation to find the elixir. Sylvia explodes with excitement as she expresses pride in her sister's hard work. Reiss can't help but laugh because he realizes she's just like any other girl. In fact, the dude found her reaction pretty cute. Sylvia beams with happiness while Laffy serves them tea. Reiss tells them that he'll be attempting to make a potion. Laffy doesn't know what he's talking about. Reiss explains that he's forced to make a potion now since she advised him against making elixirs. Sylvia wonders how long it takes. The boy explains that it doesn't take him more than 60 minutes to create a potion. Reiss demonstrates his ability by claiming that he could easily make a middle-grade potion within seconds. Laffy is genuinely concerned and tells Sylvia that Reiss' capabilities are actually beyond the realm of what the average person is capable of. He's overpowered as hell. After a while, Reiss ends up with a bundle of potions on the table. Sylvia and Laffy demand a visual demonstration of the process. Reiss entertains them by initiating the procedure of extraction, followed by purification. Then, he enters component stabilization and finishes the procedure with sublimation. In a flash of a few seconds, Reiss has created a work of art, while the sisters witness the true mastery of the Alchemist. Reiss is so used to his alchemy skills that they have all become a habit for him. He doesn't have any weak spots and has honed his skills to perfection. Reiss has just created a high-grade potion, even though he wanted to make a middle-grade one. He wonders if he should sell these instead, as they'll easily take care of his expenses. Sylvia finally realizes what Laffy is talking about when she says Reiss isn't an average alchemist. The alchemist Reiss stumbled across Laffy, and while he seemed like a good-for-nothing blowhard at first, the boy possessed incredible talent. He could make the most valuable medicine instantly, a man who could pull off a feat no other alchemist could. An alchemist that was considered prodigious with his talent. The following day, Reiss is warned not to draw too much attention to the crowd. He talks to Amelia about what occurred the other day. Reiss has come to sell another product instead of the elixirs. Amelia inspects it and realizes that it's actually another high-quality potion. Reiss reflects that he's gonna get in major trouble if he can't sell a product like this. Thankfully, Amelia happily accepts the idea of buying the product and wants to interrogate him about what happened yesterday. Laffy comes to the guy's rescue and sidetracks the conversation. Amelia judges the high-quality potions to be equivalent to 3 gold coins. It's an amount that Reiss didn't expect, since this much money can help him live on his own for weeks. Amelia explains that the guild is in need of potions since they're fighting monsters frequently. Reiss is glad that he's capable of sustaining himself now. He asks what Laffy's doing, staring at the request board. Reiss spots many quests and realizes the variety of missions. Laffy tells him that he can take on quests that allow him to make positions and stuff. However, that's exactly where she messed up. She's motivated him to become an adventurer now. Laffy internalizes that it's going to be problematic if someone queries a quest for elixirs, and this guy actually pulls off the impossible in front of them. She wants to do everything in her ability to prevent Reiss from exposing his abilities. Amelia briefs the boy about his current rank. He's sitting at the bottom F tier like the low-grade adventurer he is. One is capable of raising their rank to D without really participating in monster quests. However, Reiss makes a special request to take on a mission related to alchemy. This is much to Laffy's dismay, because she doesn't want him to expose his abilities like that. Laffy reads a request that hasn't been completed by anyone for a while. Reiss is willing to complete the quest with a smile on his face. Laffy reminds him of the words she spewed only a second ago. However, Reiss possesses room temperature IQ and wants to take on the quest solely because it looks interesting. Reiss arrives at the location of the client. He remembers Laffy's words and knows that she's worried about him. Reiss wants to complete his first request without any flaws to assure Laffy's confidence in him. Reiss enters inside and declares that he's here to fulfill the quest. Reiss spots someone at the counter. It's a girl who tells him that he can begin the mission right away. Reiss calls Daisy a kid because of her midget height. Daisy is thoroughly offended and tells him that they're roughly the same age. An annoyed Daisy tells him to shut up and follow her lead. Arriving inside the room, Daisy explains that his task is to extract and purify the herbs before them. Reiss reflects that it's actually a simple task and a two-step process. Daisy tells him that he's allowed to do as many as he wants. She's got high expectations and intimidates Reiss, even though this fool probably has the best abilities when it comes to alchemy. Faced with such high expectations, Reiss begins the extraction process. The room is illuminated with the joint process of extraction and purification. What is to be noted during the observations of Reiss' work is that he's more adept than the ordinary alchemist by a magnitude of 50. After a while, the boy winds up with a number of bottles and wonders if he should overexert and do even more. When Daisy returns to check on Reiss' status, she is literally left speechless. The dudes filled the entire damn room with the extracted herbs. Daisy questions the kind of voodoo magic he performed to complete so many of them. Reiss shrugs it off and says it's just what he does at his normal speed. Daisy is flabbergasted and emphasizes that what he did is the speed of a god. Reiss performs a visual demonstration to show her the genuity of the process. However, Daisy gets so overwhelmed that the midget basically faints to her doom. Reiss welcomes her when she regains consciousness. Daisy wonders what's happening and slaps the living daylights out of him when she realizes she's resting on his lap. Daisy questions what she's doing on his lap and finds herself incredibly flustered. Reiss apologizes for being a Rizzler. Daisy observes his work and tells Reiss that he's the top G in the alchemy business at this point. She commends his skill and finds it a mystery as to why he's not Jeff Bezos right now. Reiss thinks for a moment and tells her that he's arrived in the capital recently. He didn't do much besides study alchemy before that. An idea pops into the head of the gold digger, who invites Reiss to work for her every now and then. She wants to learn alchemy straight from the master of the craft. Reiss is stunned, reflecting that he's got zero experience when it comes to teaching. This stupid idiot decides to accept it, purely because it sounds interesting. Daisy smiles as she gets what she wants. She takes the quest paper and delivers a satisfying stamp of completion. Reiss is dazzled and tells her that he's going off to the guild to report his first ever W. Daisy is a little too satisfied and wants to see him more often. With Reiss completing his first quest, Amelia congratulates our boy. Reiss is granted a singular gold coin for the completion of the quest. He assures Laffy that he's capable of completing quests on his own. Laffy shoots him a glare because of his words from a while ago. 30 minutes before this interaction, the fool showed Laffy the completion of the quest. Laffy was actually happy up until the point when Reiss revealed how hard he worked, and didn't stop until he filled the entire room with extracted herbs. Laffy takes a breather after hearing what she feared happened. Laffy scolds the boy for naively messing up again. Reiss doesn't know what she's talking about, but apologizes for overexerting himself a teeny tiny bit. Laffy is fixated on the fact that his abilities literally made his client pass out. She's also pretty certain that this client of his is ripping him off. She made him agree to frequent requests because of his stupidly powerful alchemy. Not only that, she also negotiated for him to tutor her. It was the perfect situation for Daisy. Reiss realizes just how badly he got manipulated by the damn midget. Laffy emphasizes that while it's not wrong to be nice, Reiss needs to be cautious with his abilities and acknowledge their worth. Reiss ponders on the worth of his powers for a brief moment, not knowing how they're truly valued. The scene switches to a random party of two adventurers who discuss the rumor of an amazing alchemist. The girl exclaims that the alchemist randomly popped up at the guild and showed off his epic collection of elixirs. They wonder if it's truly real, because something like that sounds fictional, even to these manga characters. Suddenly, a pair of mysterious eyes peer at them from the shadows. The two adventurers experience an oh shit moment, because they know they're dead meat. A few days after Reiss officially became an adventurer, he had to forcefully accept Daisy's request. Poor Reiss randomly talks about acknowledging one's worth. He shares that his friend told him to be more conscious of his value because he's got an impressive skill. However, Reiss has hit a roadblock because he doesn't even know how to measure his worth. Daisy is surprised that this dumbass has friends at all. She advises him to do things in moderation. Reiss inquires further. The midget explains that if the dude started selling a ton of elixirs like crazy, he's gonna draw a lot of attention. The best way to sell them would be to sell one elixir a year, decreasing the risk of his exposure. She also advises him to sell in secret, so that his identity isn't uncovered. Daisy wants Reiss to use his powers to sell elixirs, because they help improve the lives of others, but they can also attract bad guys. Daisy questions if Reiss possesses the ability to create elixirs. When Reiss confirms the fact, Daisy immediately asks him to help her how to make elixirs. Reiss doesn't question jack shit and tells her to use the 4-step procedure required to make an elixir. Daisy gets to work, as today is the first official tutoring session between the two of them. Daisy put all that time and effort into crafting a high-quality potion. Reiss inspects the potion and realizes that Daisy isn't some average alchemist either. However, she is pretty dumb. Daisy finds it an offensive comment, while Reiss tries to clarify that she lacks knowledge beyond the fundamentals. Reiss internalizes that he's got an ingredient called Kukura, something that grows in a very specific place, and allows for the production of elixirs. However, Kukura isn't found in textbooks, so most people are unaware of it. Daisy didn't even know about its existence, so Reiss thinks it's time she hit the books. They engage in an active study session, where Daisy realizes she literally has to go through tons of material. Daisy isn't willing to do the task, and wonders if reading this much will help improve her alchemy at all. Reiss questions if Daisy is aware of the Lamu herb. Daisy is annoyed that he's testing her knowledge, but answers correctly. Reiss explains the part she doesn't know about regarding the production of a potion capable of treating wounds. He puts aside 2 potions that each of them made and tells her to inspect them. Daisy uses her analysis skills and gets stumped. She has to admit that Reiss' potion is far more impressive in quality while hers is, at best, medium in quality. Reiss wonders if she is able to spot the one thing that made them different. Daisy doesn't know, while Reiss explains that it lies in how they delegated the visualization process of sublimation. Understanding the herb's components significantly enhances the proficiency of the ability. Reiss concludes that studying is required to master any skill, so it's really time for Daisy to hit the books for real. After a while, Reiss pops up at Laffy and Sylvia's place. Sylvia congratulates him for becoming a full-fledged adventurer now. Reiss wonders if she, too, is familiar with the fainting incident regarding his client. He's a little embarrassed and hopes that Laffy kept it a secret. As for Laffy, she seems almost unrecognizable to Reiss at first because of the apron. Laffy blushes and prefers Reiss to eat some food, as she's supposed to treat him like a guest. It's safe to say that Laffy is not only the best girl, but she's also wife material. During their dinner conversation, Laffy asks what's new with Reiss. He blurts out that he's started teaching Daisy how to do alchemy. Laffy is concerned if he's going to teach her the same kind of alchemy. Reiss thinks for a moment and believes that it will take Daisy decades before she even gets to the same level as him. Sylvia wonders if Reiss also learned alchemy on his own. Reiss denies any such thing and finds himself disgusted to admit that he had a really good mentor. Sylvia questions the kind of mentor he had. Reiss casually calls them hopeless and flames his master. The person would throw him to monsters all the while he was a kid. They also never did any housework, leaving it to him. They were basically the worst kind of person imaginable. In fact, Reiss doesn't ever want to meet his mentor ever again. As he's about to leave, Sylvia thanks him with sincerity. She thinks that Reiss has done a lot for them with his powers, and she is grateful for that. Reiss returns a happy smile and expresses his gratitude for being of service to them. The following day, Reiss manages to complete Daisy's request and wants to return to the guild to report the completion. However, he sees a group of people clumped up. Noticing the atmosphere surrounding the crowd, Reiss tries to investigate. All he finds is Amelia, who is swarmed by the people and tries to escape. Amelia begs for Reiss' help and claims that the town's entrance has received 2 massively injured adventurers, with the girl on the verge of death. She begs him to do exactly what is required, which means to produce an elixir and save the people. Reiss reads between the lines, but realizes the risk of using an elixir in such a public setting. He knows that it's far too risky, especially when he ponders the words of Daisy and Laffy, who both advised him against it. However, Reiss demonstrates his selfless nature as he disregards his personal peace for the lives of others. Amelia takes him to the location of the injured adventurers. The girl has incurred wounds all over her body. Reiss observes their terrible condition and realizes that they're in extreme danger. Reiss gives the girl a green potion to fix the blood loss, and now he wants to take out an elixir to take care of her wounds. However, the problem is that Reiss doesn't have anything in his inventory to cure poison. That means he has to use his ability on the spot to procure an antidote. Reiss ignores the risks and immediately crafts the potion, shocking the adventurer. Reiss gives him the potion, which he then feeds to his injured party member. Shortly after consuming the potions, the girl regains consciousness and finds herself escaping the horns of death. The people all around are in shock and amazement at the alchemist's abilities. After the conclusion of the incident, Reiss' powers were observed by a giant crowd, amassing him a bundle of requests all reserved for him. Reiss is now suffering the consequences of his actions, which is even worse than being broke. He's received about 30 requests, but a good number of them are from royalty companies looking to acquire assets. The healed party member thanks Reiss for his help and vows to pay him back someday. Reiss assures her that he doesn't require any such payment because he acted on his own. Sensing the girl's guilt, he tells her to help her when he's in trouble someday. The girl thanked him again, while Reiss reflected that he had finally managed to improve someone's life with his abilities. He has decided on one thing, and that is to sell elixirs to the people who need them the most. Reiss returns to his work and aspires to find people worthy of his gifts. After taking care of a number of requests, Reiss is extremely exhausted. He's also low on ingredients, so it will take a while for him to go on accepting requests now. He comes back to Amelia, who is stumped, to inform him that he received an important request from a high-ranking noble. Hearing those words, Reiss loses his composure. Reiss glances over the request, while Amelia explains that the noble belongs to the Redium family, which he had already declined earlier. Reiss wonders if he should turn them down, but Amelia isn't so sure about that, because these guys are serious, and they're here for a little chat in person. A little backstory on the Redium family. These guys are one of the 4 great noble families in the entire kingdom. They've got important connections in supporting the royal family, and they also have extensive affairs in foreign relations. They're basically the real deal. Amelia bids him the best of luck with a concerned expression on her face. Reiss, on the other hand, doesn't want to have another conversation, because he's so exhausted and only wants to sleep. Arriving at the mansion of the Redium family, Reiss wonders if the entire place is made out of gold. He is welcomed by a maid of the family, who had been anticipating his arrival. The maid takes him to her master. Reiss prepares himself for the man he is about to meet, wondering if these guys will be willing to listen to him at all. Entering inside, Reiss is startled. The man before him introduces himself as Wills Redium. Reiss keeps his introduction simple. Wills points out the boy's young age, as he had been expecting an experienced alchemist to show up at his place. Reiss, in his mind, is contemplating going home, because he's dealing with a conversation drier than the Sahara Desert. Instead of beating around the bush, Wills gets to the point and questions if Reiss truly doesn't share the intention of selling the elixir. Reiss declines with a smile on his face. The high noble offers him 300 gold coins for it. Reiss declines again. The noble offers him the support of his family. Reiss declines again. The noble has struck a wall dealing with Reiss' unpersuaded stance. He questions if the boy came to learn alchemy by himself. Reiss tells him that he has a mentor. The man asks for his mentor's identity. Reiss claims that there's no point in telling him, but it's a nobody called Lurimes. Suddenly, the noble's face goes all blank, because Lurimes is literally known as the fallen hero. Reiss is embarrassed to hear such a wonky and cringeworthy nickname, deserving of his master. Wills isn't surprised that she's the one who taught him. Wills actually resigns from the discussion, and even offers him a carriage on the way back. Reiss declines again. Wills extends his hand, in the hope of building a connection with the famous alchemist in the future. Reiss doesn't decline this time. When he leaves, Wills is left with the impression that he had a conversation with an intriguing young man. After the meeting, Reiss finds himself in the market, after having dealt with many quests. Reiss has only one elixir left to himself, and has to go shopping for ingredients. During this short journey, Reiss finds Laffy and her sister Sylvia. He's surprised that Sylvia is now capable of enjoying the outside world again. Sylvia shows her magic amplification staff, since she's also an adventurer, just like her sister. Reiss is rather surprised to hear this. What's more, Sylvia's rank is also S, so they're both just an air of overpowered sisters. Laffy tells him that they actually just slain a water dragon by themselves. Reiss freezes at the thought of the monster because, in this world, only strong people can fight strong monsters. The highest rank ever is the SS class for monster classification. Among them, the water dragon is deemed an S-ranked monster, capable of destroying a country if it wanted to. In short, Reiss is not dealing with the average sisters anymore. Reiss finds it pretty ironic that she's scolding him for being abnormal, when these guys are powerhouses on their own. Laffy tells him that they're going to peace out at home. Reiss states that he'll go, and visit his student Daisy. After he leaves, Sylvia wonders about where Reiss even came from. She doesn't know if he's had any friends in the past. Laffy notes that he did have a mentor to keep him busy. Sylvia claims that while the boy is amazing, he doesn't prefer talking about himself. Both of them are curious to learn of his reaction once he discovers that neither of them is a true sister. Laffy claims that he'll be more surprised by Sylvia's state. Sylvia was kidnapped by goblins. Laffy saved her, but she suffered from amnesia and became a lost girl with no one to care for her. Laffy assumed responsibility for the girl and started living with her. Sylvia mentions how she always relies on Laffy's support. Suddenly, Sylvia's eyes turn a horrific black as she collapses to the ground. She is incapable of understanding how her illness surpassed the strength of the elixir. Laffy wants to take her home immediately, disregarding all the luggage that they have. Right now, Laffy is begging for Reiss' support. Reiss, on the other hand, is chilling as he is almost at Daisy's shop. He took a shortcut this time and thinks that he's adjusted his life at the capital. The boy reflects that he'll be going there as a customer for the first time ever. He expected a harsh reaction from Daisy, but instead was met with a beaming girl who kindly asked what he needed. Reiss takes a moment to comprehend the differences in his expectations versus what actually took place in reality. Daisy is surprised that he's the one who asked her for a request. She also comments on how busy he's been recently with his elixir-saving journeys. She's heard everything from her customers. She doesn't even know why Reiss keeps in touch with someone like her. Reiss takes what he needs and finds Daisy's customer service smile to be top-notch. Daisy wonders what he's going to do with the ingredients he's gathered. Reiss explains that he wants to make an ointment. Daisy thinks that he'll get on the bad side of the herbalists because they'll go out of business soon. Daisy decides to shift the conversation by telling him about the adventurers he saved. She's surprised that Reiss isn't aware of their case. The two of them were attacked in an area where monsters had never been reported before. They also sighted an unoccupied house nearby. Reiss considers it strange because he remembers the wound infected with poison and rot. Even though there are numerous monsters capable of inflicting poison, not many have the ability to rot. Such a wound could only be incurred by an undead monster or some kind of S-tier weapon. These two proclivities seem likely, and although Reiss doesn't know how the monsters attacked them, he knows that monsters only appear in places where the density of mana is pretty high. Needless to say, Reiss accepts it as a weird thing and decides to leave. As he's reaching for the door, Reiss is suddenly pulled away by a hand, leaving Daisy confused. The person who has suddenly kidnapped this fool is none other than Laffy. She refuses to explain because there's no time. As they arrive in Sylvia's room, Reiss hears from Laffy how she fell all of a sudden. She doesn't know what could have happened, as even an S-ranked adventurer like her was incapable of saving her sister. She begged Reiss to save her. Reiss assured Laffy's conscience that everything will be alright. Laffy thanked him, while Reiss explained that Sylvia was affected by a condition called magic crystal disease. This peculiar disease is a condition where magical energy freezes inside the body, making the person incapable of motion. The elixir he administered her slowed the progress of the illness, but it didn't cure it completely. It's actually Reiss' first time seeing such a disease. He wants to give it a shot by making a position specifically for curing the disease. The problem is, Reiss lacks the proper ingredients to do so. Laffy volunteers to gather the ingredients for him, but she's not adept with handling herbs. Reiss invites Laffy to come to his place. Even though there are monsters, he has the necessary ingredients to prepare the potion. Laffy is prepared to face the monsters for him, while Reiss explains that Sylvia's condition will enter critical territory in 7 days. He wants to leave in a day with Laffy, and decides to make his preparations for the journey. Before he heads off, a teary-eyed Laffy thanks him for all of his help. Later that night, Reiss is making his preparations. He adds the poison antidote to the ointment and then prepares a ring. The following day, Laffy tells him their carriage is ready for the journey. Reiss and Laffy initiate their adventure to save Sylvia from her condition. A concerned Reiss asks Laffy about Sylvia's caretaker. She tells him that Amelia is looking after her in their absence. Reiss believes that Amelia is going this far for Laffy's sake, who probably sacrificed her respect just to get someone reliable by her sister's bedside. Reiss tells Laffy about an important discovery that he's made after examining Sylvia. He claims that the crystal disease originates from the northeast and wouldn't be contracted ordinarily in the capital. Reiss wonders if the girl frequented the northeast by chance. Laffy denies such a thing, which leads to only one possibility. Laffy finally confesses that they're not related by blood. Reiss isn't really too surprised. Laffy explains the backstory that led to them being tied together. Reiss assumes that Sylvia's origins must be related to the Northeast. Laffy asks about the location of Reiss' house. Reiss explains that it's in a forest down the road. Laffy finds it strange that he lives in the woods. Reiss reflects that it's the same house that his mentor treasured him after mysteriously disappearing one day. To this day, he wonders where his master went. Suddenly, Reiss and Laffy come across an injured man, who advises them against going into the other forest. He claims that he was attacked by a strong monster and barely survived. When Laffy inquires for the kind of monster he faced, the man explains that it was a blood wolf. Laffy accepts the answer and tells him that they can't afford not going into the forest. They finally arrive in the forest where Reiss was raised. Reiss recommends going by foot for the rest of the journey. He notes that this is necessary because of the monsters that are going to attack the carriage upon the slightest misstep. He warns Laffy about the monsters. Laffy's adventurer mode goes active as she becomes a totally different person. Reiss is surprised that they haven't encountered a single monster so far. Suddenly, he is attacked by a strong creature. Laffy protects him at the last moment. It's the same C-rank monster, the blood wolf, that the man had warned him about. Not only that, but it's an entire pack. Reiss thinks they're dead meat, but he's forgetting the rank of his partner. Laffy comments on his relaxed demeanor, while Reiss explains that he's used to facing monsters, but he's really scared in such a situation. He's thinking about escaping more than anything. Laffy realizes that he wants to run, and helps create an opening for him by slicing apart one of the wolves. Laffy tells him to run away while she finishes off the monsters, because he'll only become a liability for her during battle. At first, Reiss wonders if she'll be okay dealing with so many wolves. After making sushi out of the wolves in seconds, Murder Chick 9000 reminds him that she's the baddest bitch of them all. Reiss runs for his life while she takes care of the monsters by herself. Reiss thinks he's pathetic for acting like this. He should have been grateful, because Reiss is suddenly greeted by a few monsters, and he has no one to protect him. Reiss turns tail, instead of stupidly jumping into battle like 99% of dummy Sekai protagonists. He's able to dodge some of their attacks, but is starting to get overwhelmed by their sheer number. During this critical moment, Reiss activates a potion that acts like a monster repellent. He throws the potion on the ground, allowing the creatures to absorb its smell. Reiss thinks he's performed some 1000 IQ play, when in reality, the wolves pitifully stare at him because the potion was absolutely useless. Reiss gets chased again and decides to use another potion instead. It's actually a dye that blinds their vision for the meantime. Reiss believes he should target their sight in the meantime. He manages to hide from the wolves and thinks it's time to find Laffy. However, a loud rumble follows as Reiss senses something. Meanwhile, Laffy has wrapped up the easy work and wonders where Reiss is. She is alarmed by the sound of a creature and immediately dashes in its direction. Laffy knows that Reiss is in trouble. It's actually how she thinks it is. Reiss is barely avoiding getting sliced into a Kit Kat like Gojo. He's got some kind of monster magnet, because they're only out here chasing him. The skeletal monster's rank is in the unknown category, giving Reiss much trouble. Reiss analyzes his situation, realizing that all of his potions from before are useless against this monster, not to mention the creature's massive height and impressive strength. Even with all the advantages, the skeleton monster has one glaring weakness. Reiss believes it is holy water. In the name of the Lord and Jesus, my guy wonders how he should utilize his strategy effectively. He figures out a plan while the monster roars at him. Reiss escapes to a nearby location and breaks the vial. He then proceeds to activate his alchemy compression and agitation process, both of which amplify the effects of the holy water, striking down the giant monster. Laffy is genuinely concerned for Reiss as she draws near him. A few minutes prior, Reiss had successfully immobilized the monster. Reiss wanted to flee from the location to find Laffy and acquire a safe distance from the skeleton monster. He reaches out for a smoke signal that acts like a flare gun. The signal goes off when Reiss is attacked by a giant sword that appears out of God knows where. Reiss' body shakes with the realization that he nearly could have gotten killed if not for his ring of impact resistance tanking the damage. The monster he left behind has awoken and is not in a good mood. Reiss thinks he's about to go down for good. The monster reaches out to crush Reiss when suddenly Laffy tells him to duck. Laffy declares, crush, and obliterates the monster before his eyes. The scene is so majestic that Reiss is actually getting down bad for her. Laffy makes fun of him for acting recklessly. Laffy glances over the creature's remains and comments on its irritating regeneration ability. The monster recovers to its original form. Laffy advises Reiss to stay behind, while she obliterates it with a single attack again. Reiss is shocked that she won in one hit, but Laffy knows there is more to the fight. The skeleton monster pumps RCT on full throttle, like he's in a battle with Sukuna or something. The monster is incapable of being destroyed, which prompts Laffy to wonder what makes it indestructible. Laffy notes that the monster is actually using magic, and declares to destroy the creature's magic. Laffy releases yet another magic ability that obliterates the terrain. She tells Reiss they've got to go. Reiss is out here acting like a male wife all of a sudden, because he's seduced by the best girl's powers. Laffy tells him that they can only run away from the skeleton monster for the time being, since they have no way of defeating it. Laffy asks Reiss for the route to his house. Reiss reflects that their main goal has always been to gather the ingredients, instead of beating monsters. As they're trying to escape, the monster stubbornly chases after them, like it's some kind of demon from hell. The monster summons lower-level wolves to chase after them. Reiss is out here losing his balls and being afraid, but Laffy is calm as hell. This girl literally destroys the wolves, all the while carrying Reiss. Laffy senses something horrifying. The monsters she has just killed are the undead. The skeleton monster is making them resurrect, as they're forced to be controlled through magic. Reiss realizes that necromancy is being used on this battlefield. He now knows why those creatures were unaffected by his potions from before. Reiss has never seen a skeleton monster capable of magic. Even among monsters, only a handful of them can use magic, such as the dragons. But actually manipulating the corpses of other monsters is a feat that separates the skeleton from the rest of the creatures. Reiss personally thinks that defeating this skeleton should have a high quest rank. He asks Laffy about their situation, who claims that they'll have to face the creature in a battle. Laffy instructs him to grab the ingredients while she fends off the monster. Laffy drops him to his house and immediately retreats to face the monster. Reiss sees her fighting the beast and hurries inside. Inside his house, Reiss is met with a dusty environment since the house was abandoned for a long time. Reiss arrives in the basement to find his materials. Thankfully, they're all fine. Reiss collects what he needs, remembering how he gathered them by risking everything. Reiss wants to return to his house someday to recover the rest of the materials. He spots a sword, remembering the time his mentor sent him to gather the ingredients. In the flashback, a frustrated Reiss tells his master that he could have died because of her instructions. She welcomes him back, with not a concern for the boy's health. At the time, Reiss was convinced that he's going to get killed because of her shenanigans. His master made his life unbearable at every moment. She offered him a sword for once, a weapon that she never found the use of on her own. Reiss thinks that he should just try to swing around the basic weapon when in difficult times. He tries to help Laffy by giving her the blade, but when he comes outside, he sees his house shattered. Laffy apologizes and asks if he's okay. Reiss cries, telling her that she just destroyed a place he had poured his sweat and blood into. More than anything, he's annoyed at the skeleton. Reiss offers the sword to Laffy, who doesn't really find the weapon special. The skeleton roars at them, while Laffy slices its arm clean off. This time, there is no process of regeneration. Laffy learns that the sword is an effective weapon against the monster. The scary skeleton chickens out when it learns that it is no match for Laffy's wrath. The monster tries to run away using its shadow technique, but Laffy knows exactly where it's going. She finishes the job by destroying the creature from within the ground. Laffy claims she's not an S-rank adventurer for the show, even though she won the battle with the help of the sword. After inspecting the monster's remains, Laffy discovers that it was embedded with a magic gem inside of it. Magic gems are crystallized forms of magical energy used in the creation of magical devices. They're usually found in the bodies of strong monsters and often channel their energy. Reiss is dazzled to see a magic gem in person for the first time. He always knew they existed, but couldn't ever think of getting his hands on one. With that said, Reiss is devastated to find his house completely destroyed, because all of the materials he gathered are no longer there. Reiss declares their mission complete and states that they should return home. 2 full days had passed since Sylvia's collapse. At last, Laffy and Reiss returned to the royal capital, with 5 days left for her treatment. Amelia had slept just by her side. Laffy cares for both of them, while Reiss prepares for the potion. Knowing that her disease is the result of energy crystallization, Reiss is tasked to make a portion of her magic absorption ability. The monster he's going to be using for this process is called a Veto. It's actually an SS rank monster that inhabits the north. The monster has its own will, controlling nearby plants with its own magic. It has the lethal ability to consume the magic of others. Reiss' mentor was the one who defeated such terrifying creatures, and later used them in her experiments. In other words, all of the girls in this manga are strong as hell. Reiss initiates the alchemical process using the sublimation and purification phases. Normally, he'd use set components, but this time, he's dealing with a medicinal potion. The most important step in the procedure is the sublimation. Usually, it is used to amplify the effectiveness of the ingredients involved. But in this case, suppression of magic absorption is required. What Reiss is doing is something that only the most experienced of alchemists are capable of pulling off. Reiss has faith in his ability and impresses Laffy with his powers. Laffy believes in his abilities from the bottom of her heart. With everything finished, Reiss now requires Sylvia to consume the medicine. He thinks they should wait until the morning. An exhausted Reiss ends up clocking out and discovers that it's morning. Reiss hurries to inform Laffy that he's done with the process. He's surprised to learn that Amelia went home. Reiss amazes Laffy when he reveals that he's done with the potion. The two of them quickly went inside her room. Sylvia's flesh is already beginning to rot due to the effects of the disease. A concerned Laffy stands speechless while Reiss uses his analyzing skills. He notices that the situation is far worse than before. Reiss gives the potion to Sylvia. Laffy believes that her disease will be no more after she drinks this potion. Even though she had faith in Reiss' abilities, nothing seemed to change. Laffy panicked at once, while Reiss explained that the potion's effects were gradual, and that Sylvia should refrain from using any form of magic for the day. Laffy grows concerned for her sister's health, while Reiss has already noticed that the potion is beginning to kick into effect. Her magic stability returns to normal, and finally, Sylvia's life is no longer the threat of danger. Reiss shares the happy news with Laffy, telling her to relax, as there's not much to worry about. However, Laffy's body collapses from the culmination of the stress that she endured for her sister's sake. Laffy apologizes while tearing up. All of her strength has dissipated from her body as she greets her dear sister. Reiss thinks it is time for him to take his exit. He wants to return tomorrow to check on her condition. Laffy thanks him for his countless favors as he heads out. On his way, Reiss contemplates that he is only fine because he borrowed Laffy's place. But now, he needs a place for himself where he can manage ingredients and potions. The inn he is staying at doesn't have much space for him to work with. Reiss arrives at Daisy's store while in a daze. He's finally managed to have a moment of peace to himself. Reiss explains that he risked his life only the previous day to gather some materials from the dangerous forest. Daisy fixates on his words regarding the dangerous skeleton they encountered in the forest. She questions if the skeleton is the same as the one who attacked the adventurers. Reiss ponders her words with confusion. Daisy explains that there was a rumor of the adventurers getting attacked by a giant skeleton in a place where there weren't any monsters. Reiss concludes that they defeated the monster. Daisy wonders if he truly managed to beat it all by himself. Reiss explains that he had a competent adventurer by his side. Daisy is curious because she heard the skeleton's rank exceeded A+ at the least. Reiss thinks that the monster is definitely stronger than that. He mentions Laffy's name. A name that Daisy is familiar with, as Laffy is famous for being the youngest S-ranked adventurer. She's impressed that he's in contact with someone so strong and popular despite his short stay in the capital. Reiss feels the same way because he's basically dealing with a celebrity. The next day, Sylvia's condition reaches full recovery. Even Reiss tells them that her magic circulation is back to how it should be. She's back to normal. Sylvia grows in excitement and hugs Reiss. Laffy is there too. Reiss tells her about the guild's interest in the skeleton monster's defeat. Laffy claims that she received a request to defeat the monster only this morning in the same forest. The person specifically asked for her, and it's the same client that even Reiss is familiar with. Will's Redium asked for the request. However, they've already defeated the monster. Laffy thinks that they should report the subjugation of the monster to the guild. Reiss decides to come because the magic gem will act as proof of the mission's completion. The three of them head to the guild. On their way, they find an accessory shop. Reiss wonders if the accessories will be a good replacement for the ring that got broken. Sylvia musters the courage to ask if Reiss wants a gift in return for treating her. Reiss thinks really hard for a moment, realizing how cute her smile is. Reiss requests for the ring, but Sylvia misinterprets his words and acts like a child. Reiss is good with choosing something cheaper, but Sylvia doesn't want him to change his decision. Sylvia is all lovey-dovey, so she buys him the ring because she thinks it's something special. Poor girl doesn't know that Reiss is going to use it as a magic defense. Later, they arrive at the guild, where Amelia welcomes all three. She's relieved to find Sylvia in top-tier condition again. On the subject of the subjugation of the monster's request, Laffy informs Amelia about the monster's defeat. Amelia finds it quite a coincidence. They even show her the magic stone they retrieved. After defeating the monster, Amelia is impressed because of its massive size and hurries to prepare a notice of the report to the Redium family. Instead of taking the reward to herself, Laffy makes an exceptional request to hand over the quest reward to Reiss. Reiss literally goes blank hearing her words. Laffy scolds him, claiming that she never came this far looking for a reward. Laffy is only concerned with her sister's condition and wants Reiss to have a token of appreciation for once. Reiss doesn't contest her arguments and simply accepts what is to come. When Amelia reveals that the reward is actually 200 gold coins, Reiss experiences a heart attack. Sylvia suggests Reiss's idea of opening up a shop business. This is an idea that Reiss has already discussed with Daisy before. However, he doesn't really have any experience in running the damn thing on his own. Reiss adds to the idea and thinks that he should come up with a workshop instead. A workshop is a place that holds meaning to any alchemist in Reiss's eyes. It's a place where one can really experiment without bothering others. Reiss was no different, but never had the chance to come up with a space of his own because of the expenses in the royal capital. Reiss has decided to make himself a workshop. Daisy doesn't know what he's rambling about. Reiss tells her that he's got some cash to spare that could be used on a workshop. Daisy doesn't know why he came to her of all people. Reiss explains that he doesn't really know any other people besides Daisy. Even though his master Lorimes did her workshop on her own, she's someone who can be considered an exception, even among the exceptions. Daisy accepts the terms, but she wants to come along with him for the experience of making the workshop. Daisy questions if the man is objecting to her simple demand. She doesn't care if someone else is helping him make the workshop, and shoots him a glare of disgust. Reiss is put in his place because he's a pushover. Daisy wants to leave at once. She asks about the other person he was planning to go to. Reiss explains that he was thinking of using Sylvia, the younger sister of the S-rank Adventurer Laffy. Daisy confirms that she knows about her, but she doesn't know how to feel about using a pro-adventurer for some construction work. She calls him a low IQ idiot for even suggesting such a thing. Daisy is supposed to bring Reiss to a weirdo who can help him make the workshop. The description is too broad for Reiss, so he thinks this mystery person is like Daisy. Arriving at this person's place, a drunk woman relieves herself upon Daisy right before the innocent eyes of the alchemist. Reiss sees what he shouldn't have seen, while Daisy probably wants to kill this woman. The woman introduces herself as Nicola and asks what Reiss's purpose for the visit is. Reiss explained that he wanted to do a workshop and was looking for help. Nicola sits down to take notes. Reiss explained that he had a workshop before, but he wanted to create one inside the two-story building he's in. Reiss is revealed to have bought his own place because he's got that rich money now. Reiss tells Nicola that he's got a model of the workshop in mind and wants a recreation on the budget of 100 gold coins. Seeing his flexible budget, Nicola thinks there can be arrangements to be made. When asked about the purpose of the workshop, Reiss explains that he's looking to make potions as well as magical devices. Nicola concludes the inquiry and bears witness to the magic gem, which is Reiss' prized possession. Nicola tells Reiss that she'll get to work after seeing the location. While she's away, Reiss queries how Daisy even came to know her. Daisy explains that they met while she was adventuring, and unfortunately, she got stuck with her. Reiss is startled to hear that she's actually been an adventurer before. Reiss takes Nicola and Daisy to the giant house he's bought. Nicola comments how spacious it is, while Daisy realizes that this will be the location of the workshop. Nicola grinds some ideas in her head and prepares a quote for the project. She also suggests Reiss to store magical energy in the magic gem. Reiss ponders for a moment, while Nicola explains that he should store magical energy to use it whenever he needs. Reiss accepts the suggestion and thinks it will be splendid to do that. Finally, taking a totally serious side to her questioning, Nicola asks the kind of relationship he shares with Daisy. Reiss' body trembles with fear as if he's been put on a knife's edge. He tries to explain that they share an amicable teacher-student relationship. Nicola's damn serial killer face is insistent on reminding Reiss what would happen if he ever even tried to hurt Daisy. Reiss takes the warning very seriously while Nicola prepares to leave. She'll return in a week for the workshop. Reiss wonders if Daisy is also going to come, to which she agrees. Reiss doesn't know what's going to happen next week based on what he's seen so far. Later, he shares a conversation with Laffy and tells her that he bought stuff for his workshop. Reiss tells her to come closer as he attaches a cute flower on her head. A flustered Laffy confronts him at once while an ordinary shop owner asks if they're on a shopping date. The station gets even worse, with both of them trying to deny the dating accusations again. But hey, I'm sure we all are rooting for these guys to happen. Reiss is in the mood to spend some money on ingredients for their dinner. Laffy tells him that Sylvia particularly likes sweet things. Reiss vaguely comments creepily, making him sound like a boomer out of his age. Later, at Laffy's place, Reiss wants to help her with the cooking process. He's not exactly experienced with cooking, and rather disappoints Laffy. If Gordon Ramsay were to grade him, he'd probably throw Reiss out of an airplane without a parachute. Dinner is served, to Sylvia's amazement. Reiss tells her that it is her sister's contributions that brought this wonderful meal. While they're doing dishes, Laffy questions the purpose of a workshop. Reiss summarizes that a workshop has magical devices and stored ingredients, and it's nothing more than a space for production. Laffy was expecting weirder things to hear from him, since Reiss is an abnormal alchemist. After the dishes, Reiss prepares to leave, and thanks Laffy for inviting him for food. A week has finally passed. Nicola teases Daisy, while Reiss tells them that he's brought a friend that he'd like to introduce. Sylvia greets them with kindness, shocking both Daisy and Nicola with her angelic presence. Nicola is head over heels for the cute girl, while Daisy has her eyes set on curvatures. Sylvia explains that she wants to help Reiss, even though she doesn't know how she can help at all. Nicola emphasizes that she doesn't have to work, because Reiss will do the heavy lifting for both Daisy and Sylvia. Daisy, on the other hand, captures the attention of Sylvia, who eagerly asks Reiss for her identity. Reiss tells her about her and asks if their preparations are finally complete. Nicola tells him that it's all stored in the magic bag. Reiss is impressed that she's got her hands on a rare magic item that uses spatial magic to store objects inside, making it convenient to carry around. Nicola explains that her friend helped her with the object, and they somehow created one using their combined efforts. This makes Reiss realize that he's never actually worked together to make something with someone else. Sylvia glances at him, while he thinks this is a great opportunity for him to have an experience unlike any other. A joyful Nicola signals the beginning of the workshop project. Funnily enough, both Daisy and Sylvia are wary of Nicola and are keeping their distance from the demon.